Resident Evil series is Capcom's golden goose and its best-selling franchise. The series has sold more than 170 million copies worldwide as of March 2025, making it the best-selling horror game series, period. Today, we are going to be doing an in-depth dive into one of the most popular and iconic antagonists of the series, the mastermind himself, Albert Wesker. But before we proceed, I would like to ask everyone watching to like, share and comment on the video. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to always get the latest Marvelous Gamers videos. With all that being said, let's get started. Wesker Project and early life. Wesker was born as Albert Towns, and he was one of many gifted children abducted by the evil Umbrella Corporation to be raised for Project W, or Project Wesker, a eugenics program that was created by the Umbrella Corporation's CEO, President Oswell E. Spencer. Spencer was convinced the world was on a self-destructive path, and his vision was to entirely remake it, ushering humanity into a bold new era. Project W was designed to create a superior race of humans by exposing the children to a virus that would grant them superhuman abilities. The children were raised to share Spencer's values, believing humans to be an evolutionary dead end in need of order, deliverance, and rebirth. The children went into different fields of study, with Albert pursuing an education and career in biotechnology. Most of the children exposed to the virus died, but Albert and another subject, Alex Wesker, also known as the Overseer from Resident Evil Revelations 2, survived. Umbrella Corporation roles. Wesker was hired by the parent company of the Umbrella Corporation, Umbrella Pharmaceuticals, in 1977 when he was still a teenager. He was given a place at the Umbrella Executive Training Center, a boarding school that was run by Umbrella. The purpose of this school was to indoctrinate the child prodigies with the aggressive and inhuman values required to advance Umbrella's viral weapons research. Wesker impressed his assessors, along with a fellow doctor, William Birkin. Both were soon offered jobs at the nearby Arklay laboratory as senior researchers, working on the T-virus project almost immediately after being assigned. Wesker and Birkin managed to splice the genes from Ebola onto the T-virus strain they stole from the company founder, Dr. James Marcus, creating an altered virus that was better able to bypass the immune system, increasing the chances of humans surviving infection and becoming zombies. This move was a rejection of Oswell E. Spencer's idea of the T-virus being used specifically for killing. Later on, Wesker and Birkin's experiments would eventually lead to the development of the Tyrant Project, which later paved the way for the discovery of the Golgotha virus, which would cause Dr. Birkin to be transferred away to lead the NEST facility. Wesker left the Umbrella Corps laboratories after this as well, opting to work for their intelligence bureau instead. In the 90s, Wesker, under the official cover of being an ex-Umbrella employee, worked for the US military as an engineering officer. Here, he had an affair with a Serbian immigrant, spawning an illegitimate child who would become Jake Muller, the protagonist of Resident Evil 6. Upon completing his tenure in the army, Wesker was reassigned by Umbrella in 1996 to serve in STARS, otherwise known as the Special Tactics and Rescue Service, a private-funded police special forces unit in Raccoon City. He was installed into STARS as the captain of the Alpha team. For the next 2 years, he operated as a mole and gained the confidence of the other members of Alpha Team. He was also the saboteur who would betray both STARS and eventually Umbrella itself in the events of the first Resident Evil. Is there anyone this guy won't sell out? Resident Evil 1. In the first installment of the series, there is an outbreak of the Epsilon strain of the T-virus in the Arklay facility, a secret underground laboratory hidden under Spencer Mansion, where the progenitor virus was studied and biological weapons were developed. Wesker and Birkin were tasked with getting the cloned embryos for the T-002 Tyrant out of the facility. When it was discovered that some bioorganic weapons, or BOWs, had escaped and were targeting civilians in the Raccoon Forest, Wesker was tasked by the Umbrella Corporation with betraying the STARS and sacrificing them to the escaped mutants, recovering the remaining BOW embryos, and covering up Umbrella's tracks by destroying the Arklay facility. Unbeknownst to Umbrella, Wesker had agreed to sell the embryos to Umbrella's rival company, known only as the Organization. He sabotaged Stars Bravo Team's chopper, which would cause Alpha Team to go investigate. On their way to investigate Bravo Team's crash, Wesker carries a version of the T-virus that would enhance his strength and regenerative abilities. After the Alpha Team encounters various Cerberus BOWs, the team escapes to Spencer Mansion. There, Wesker blackmails his teammate Barry Burton into helping him destroy evidence by threatening Barry's family. With Barry's help, Wesker finds out that the Bravo team's captain, Enrico Marini, is alive and has incriminating evidence against the Umbrella Corporation and shoots him in the underground tunnels. In the lab, Wesker prepares to wake the Tyrant BOW and use it to kill the rest of the surviving Alpha team. He also infects himself with the T-virus strain he was carrying. There, he is cornered by the rest of his team, where he confesses to his deception and his control over Barry. There are a couple of ways in which what follows plays out due to multiple versions of the cutscenes in the game based on the player's choices. In one version, after revealing to Barry that he was bluffing and that Barry's family wasn't in trouble, Wesker is knocked out by Barry. In an alternate version of events, Wesker releases the Tyrant, ordering it to attack the team, but the T-002 seems to have its own plans, recognizing Wesker as a participant in the Tyrant project and stabbing him first, impaling him through the chest before going after the others. Revival and superhuman abilities. Though seriously wounded and presumed dead, the T-virus saves Wesker's life by regenerating him. He just about manages to escape the mansion as it gets destroyed, but not before a fight with Lisa Trevor, the test subject that would lead to the discovery of the Golgotha virus. The T-virus strain had genetically enhanced him to have superhuman abilities like superhuman strength, speed, and enhanced durability and regeneration. Wesker, in the meantime, begins working with the Organization, despite the fact that he could not procure the embryo samples he promised. He was accepted into their ranks, yet his reputation had suffered a blow. When Dr. Birkin completed the G or Golgotha variant of the virus, the Organization planned to steal it, and Wesker was pivotal in establishing an external contact between the Organization and their spy, Ada Wong, who had infiltrated Umbrella as a mole. He helped Ada secure a G-virus tissue sample and regained his popularity and influence within the Organization. Resident Evil Code Veronica Antarctic Events. In late December 1998, the unnamed rival company sends Wesker to capture Alexia Ashfold, who was rumoured to be alive despite her reported death over a decade ago. He launches an assault on the Rockford Island, utilising their HCF Special Forces team to release a T-virus strain into the ecosystem and release some BOWs as well to absolutely level the island's infrastructure. Wesker and his forces were unsuccessful in locating samples on the island, though he did discover that Claire Redfield, his former colleague Chris Redfield's younger sister, had been taken captive by Umbrella and imprisoned in its concentration camp. He leaves the island in a submarine after discovering Alexia was really alive at Umbrella's Antarctic base. In the Antarctica base, he attempts to apprehend Alexia, but Chris manages to destroy her. Wesker does, however, get the last laugh, taking the dead body of Rockfort prisoner Steve Burnside, who had been infected with the T. Veronica virus by Alexia. While making his escape, he comes across Chris and Claire again. He takes the opportunity to try to eliminate the two of them, taking Claire hostage at first, but releasing her on the promise of fighting Chris. Clearly superior in combat, he contemplated killing Chris then and there. However, the self-destruct sequence in the base prevented him from doing so, and he escaped again via a submarine, leaving Chris with a simple message: "I won this game." Umbrella's fall and rival operations. During the next few years, Wesker continued his work for the rival company while furthering his own personal agendas. He took on a more senior role within the organization, selling their bioweapons to interested parties as the Umbrella Corporation began its period of collapse. Wesker also made secret deals with other companies and sold samples from various assets he had acquired to many of Umbrella's competitors, all of whom were happy to keep lining his pockets in return. In August 2002, Wesker is negotiating the sale of weapons to Javier Hidalgo, a longtime client of the Umbrella Corporation and the drug lord who is running the Sacred Snakes cartel. He sells him a strain of the T-virus and some BOWs that the organization has created in exchange for a piece of the cartel's business, and of course, a large fee. Wesker is least bothered with what Hidalgo does with the weapon and watches on from afar as the cartel boss unleashes the weapons in his country and wreaks chaos, causing the US forces to intervene and kill Hidalgo. Later on, Wesker is tracked down by Jack Krauser, an American soldier who was injured during the mission and subsequently removed from active duty. Jack offers his services to both Wesker and the organization and fakes his death to become one of Wesker's most trusted allies. In 2004, a routine intelligence mission for the rival company led Wesker to the wilderness of the Russian Caucasus. He investigates a nearby village, the chemical plant of which is discovered to be Umbrella's secret Russian base. Wesker travels there in search of the UMF-013, which is the Arklay Laboratories supercomputer that Colonel Vladimir had, on behalf of Umbrella, confiscated shortly before Alpha Team's arrival at the Spencer Mansion nearly 5 years prior. During the investigation of the village, he runs into his old comrades, Chris Redfield and Valentine, whom he had lured to Russia to use as a smokescreen to infiltrate the base. Having bigger fish to fry than killing his old teammates, he creates a diversion and escapes with the base plans. Wesker infiltrates the facility and, as planned, uses Chris and Jill's anti-biohazard team as a diversion while causing a level 4 biohazard. Wesker steals Umbrella's perfected strain of T-virus and kills Colonel Sergei Vladimir in a battle between the virus-enhanced villains. He leaves the facility, escaping with all of Umbrella's archival data, which he downloaded from the mainframe, but not before ordering the Umbrella AI Red Queen to delete everything on the server, making sure his former comrades cannot access the data to find incriminating evidence against his old employers. Corporates just love that kind of loyalty. Wesker then brokers a secret deal with the US government and testifies anonymously in court against Spencer and the Umbrella Corporation, providing irrefutable evidence, in the form of excerpts of the data he downloaded, that Umbrella was the one to blame for the destruction of Raccoon City. This soon leads to the final dissolution of Umbrella Pharmaceuticals and opens up a clear path ahead for Wesker to take total control of the rival company. He leaks the perfected T-virus onto the black market, which causes a boom in bioterrorism. Wesker also makes plans for strengthening his business plans by striking a deal with an executive of Tricell Incorporated, another pharmaceutical company in the pursuit of making bioweapons. Excella Gioni, an up-and-coming member of Tricell's pharmaceutical division, piques Wesker's interest because of her intelligence and character. He gives her information about the T-virus from the stolen Umbrella data in return for her loyalty as she advances her own position in the company. Keep a note of this, as it's important later on. Resident Evil 4 Behind the Scenes. In 2004, Albert Wesker is in contention to lead the organization and enlists the help of Ada Wong from Resident Evil 2. Ada is secretly reporting back to the higher-ups of the organization, who have caught wind of Wesker's trysts with Tricell and believe him to be a malignant tumor and want to remove him before he destroyed the organization from within, just like he did to STARS. Ada's intelligence missions for Wesker resulted in the discovery of the Las Plagas parasite in southern Europe. Wesker sends his trusty lieutenant Jack Krauser to infiltrate the Los Illuminados cult to retrieve a sample. Ada was also sent in to help Krauser, with the organization testing her loyalties to Wesker. Ada does betray Wesker in the end, giving the organization the dominant strain Plaga and giving Wesker the subordinate Plaga. Wesker doesn't really seem concerned by her betrayal, anticipating it and still managing to source the dead dominant strain Plaga, allegedly from the corpse of Krauser. Ada's deception merely prolongs the inevitable, as Wesker manages to become the head of the organization. His goal now is to resurrect the Umbrella Corporation in his own image, but something is lacking. Wesker needed something more. He needed to seek out Oswell Spencer. Resident Evil 5, Ouroboros Plot and Death, Wesker spends nearly all the organization's funds trying to look for Spencer. In the meantime, he and Excella Gione have established a BOW trade ring through Ricardo Irving, where BOWs are sold as side products of the Plaga research on the black market across the world and without a paper trail. Irving is then contacted by Spencer's butler, facilitating a meeting between Wesker and Spencer at long last. At Spencer Estate, Spencer reveals Wesker's origins and tells him about the Wesker project. Wesker finally realizes that the entire BOW research project was meant to acquire data for a eugenics project. Spencer tells him that he lured Wesker back in the hopes they could put the past behind them and forge a new alliance to complete the Wesker Children project and install Spencer as their god. Enraged at Spencer's arrogance and seeing no more use for him, Wesker impales him in cold blood. It just so happened that his ex-Stars comrades, Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield, happened to walk in, having arrived with the aim of arresting Spencer. In the battle that ensues, Wesker and Jill are thrown out a window and plummet hundreds of feet to their presumed deaths. Once again, Wesker's powers help him cheat death, and he even saves Jill's life, intending to use her as a test subject to get revenge on Chris. After that, Wesker focuses on Spencer's vision of creating a superior human race. He uses the news of his death to his advantage, leaving the organisation and contacting Guillaume to collect on his end of the bargain he made all those years ago in 2003. Told you to keep a note. He is now in bed with Tricell completely. Wesker gives the Las Plagas data and samples to Irving, and for the next 2 years, they work on making the strain more marketable. He uses Guillaume's influence in Tricell and has her take over as the CEO of Tricell's African division. Guillaume then gets an old umbrella facility excavated and reopened to gain access to the source progenitor virus. After that, Wesker has the Tricell scientists come up with his pièce de résistance, the Ouroboros virus, a virus meant to wipe out all but a handful of humanity with superior DNA. The initial virus was too strong, so Wesker used the cryogenically preserved Jill, who was revealed to have antibodies against the T-virus. Wesker succeeds in perfecting the virus in 2009, and now the only thing standing in his way is his ex-teammate, Chris Redfield. Chris and his new partner, Shiva Alomar, set out to stop Wesker's doomsday plot and track him and Guillaume after killing Ricardo Irving. Wesker and his companion get on a Tricell carrier that is carrying a stealth bomber on board with Jill Valentine, now awakened from her cryostasis. To distract and delay Chris and Shiva, who boarded the carrier as well, Wesker injects Guillaume with the Ouroboros virus, mutating her into a giant monster that tears up the carrier. Since injecting himself with the experimental T-virus all the way back in 1996 and gaining superpowers, Wesker has had to regularly inject himself with a serum known as PG67AW that he developed after his battle with Colonel Vladimir to keep the virus in check. Now the problem was that taking too much of the serum neutralized his powers. Chris takes advantage of this knowledge and overdoses Wesker on the serum in a confrontation during the bomber's takeoff. Wesker still manages to hold off the agents and take off from the carrier. However, he gets pulled out of the bomber when the rear hatch opens up, and despite his weakened state, he manages to survive the fall. Doesn't give up easily, this guy, right? With Project Ouroboros destroyed, Wesker infects himself with one of the bomber's missiles in a last-ditch attempt at defeating Chris. This would prove to be his final mistake, as he is trapped in a volcano, and Chris launches an RPG at him from a helicopter, finally killing him once and for all. Legacy and impact post-death. Albert Wesker's death was felt all across the BOW underworld, and by several individuals, such as Ada Wong and his sibling from the Wesker project, Alex Wesker. Alex would continue where Albert left off in trying to create a new generation of Ubermensch, with research she gathered of the Ouroboros samples. Remember when he had an illegitimate son when he was in the military? Well, in the future, mercenary Jake Muller, all grown up, inherited Wesker's immunity to viral infections, which gave him protection against mutagenic pathogens. He is one of the protagonists of Resident Evil 6. Wesker's research and assets were also seized and handed over to the recently revived Blue Umbrella private military company, being run by his former associates in the rival company, who took advantage of the deal he made with the US government when sinking the original Umbrella Corporation. This new Umbrella company was tasked with redeeming its predecessor's dark legacy. The seized research helped them develop key anti-BOW firearms for anti-biohazard units, such as the BSAA. Minor cameos and playable depictions. Albert Wesker has made numerous cameos in Resident Evil games, despite not actually being essential to the story. There are photos of him in Resident Evil 2 and 3, and a file referencing him. In Resident Evil Revelations 2, Wesker is playable in the game's raid mode. In Resident Evil 0, he appears as a minor character before the events of the first game. He was also a playable character in Wesker mode in the 2016 remaster. Wesker also makes non-canon appearances in a number of games, such as a playable character in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Fate of Two Worlds and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. He was also added as a playable killer in the Resident Evil Project W expansion. Wesker appears as a spirit character in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. In Street Fighter V, Urien has a premium costume that makes him look like Wesker. A skin based on Wesker was available as downloadable content in Lost Planet 2. Alternate universe and expanded media appearances. Wesker has appeared in several Resident Evil live-action films. In the 2007 film Resident Evil Extinction, he appeared as the chairman of the Umbrella Corporation, played by Jason O'Mara. He reappeared in 2010's Resident Evil Afterlife as the main antagonist of the film, this time portrayed by Sean Roberts. He is initially an antagonist in 2012's Resident Evil Retribution, but later allies with Alice, with Roberts reprising his role. Roberts plays Wesker one last time as a secondary antagonist in 2016's Resident Evil The Final Chapter. Roberts' portrayal of the character was criticised for being one-dimensional and over the top. A version of Wesker appears as a police officer and secondary antagonist in the rebooted 2021 film Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, played by Umbrella Academy's Tom Hopper. The 2022 Netflix Resident Evil series, which has Wesker being portrayed by Lance Reddick, delves into his backstory and personal experiments with human cloning. Reddick's portrayal was praised by critics for his menacing but steely energy, despite deviation from the source material.
Highly overrated.
Developer commentary and design insights. Director Shinji Mikami and designer Isao Ohishi originally dreamt up a cyborg police officer. Then writer Kenichi Iwao scrapped the idea and completely redesigned the characters and the game's backstory. He was depicted as a white male with blonde hair, a former Special Forces member who was highly intelligent and physically strong, adding a cold demeanour to go with his egotistical mindset. Designer Jun Takeuchi suggested giving Wesker a pair of black sunglasses to help differentiate him from the other characters. The glasses became Wesker's signature look throughout the series. The character's light skin and blonde hair design were made to evoke the aesthetic of the Nazi ideal of Übermensch, reflecting the series' core theme of eugenics. The early concept art of Wesker's Ouroboros mutation in Resident Evil 5 differed significantly from the final version. Originally designed with a mental power combat style for 1 versus 1 combat against Chris, the character was equipped with additional weaponry to accommodate Shiver's assistance in the final boss battle. Wesker has been portrayed throughout his arc as a proper, irredeemable, and overbearing villain.
Okay, we go with your plan.
Marvelous verdict. Albert Wesker is your quintessential 90s villain with a nefarious plan. He is unapologetically a bad guy and does not care about it. The shades, the swagger, and the saga of Wesker truly make him one of the best villains of the genre. And he makes a great case for being Capcom's greatest villain. This has been the complete Albert Wesker lore explored. Did you think we missed something? Do you have any secrets about Albert Wesker that we don't know about? Comment down below. As always, please like, share and comment on the video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be the first to be notified of all things marvellous. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.